It started with a cry. Not mine, hers. 4 months old, impossibly small, wrapped in that kind of innocence that doesn't yet know the world can be cruel. That morning, I kissed her on the forehead, told her I loved her, and walked out the door praying her father would show up for her the way I needed him to. But deep down, I already knew. I knew the weight I carried wasn't shared. I knew I'd been doing everything, working, cleaning, feeding, surviving. I knew he hadn't held a job since 2021 and still wore his laziness like a second skin, refusing to cook, refusing to clean, refusing to even try. But I was desperate. Daycare was too expensive, and I had no other choice. So I went back to work, and I left my baby with him. At first, everything seemed fine. When I came home, she was clean, sleeping, peaceful. Sometimes I'd walk in and find him bouncing her gently or taking her for a walk, and I wanted to believe, I needed to believe, that somehow maybe he'd finally stepped up, that maybe fatherhood had awakened something in him that I hadn't been able to. But hope has a cruel habit of blinding us. Because one afternoon my neighbor knocked on my door and shattered that illusion with 7 words I'll never forget. She cries. She cries for hours. She told me that every time I left for work, my daughter screamed and sobbed until her voice went raw. She said she'd knocked and knocked until he finally came to the door, disoriented and groggy. He'd been asleep, deep sleep, while our baby cried out for someone, anyone, to answer her. That night I sat in the bathroom and wept, and then I made a plan. The next morning I left the house like normal. I kissed my daughter, told her I'd be back soon, and closed the door with shaking hands. I waited 30 minutes, drove around the block, sat in silence with my heart in my throat. Then I went home. I unlocked the front door and walked into a house so still it made my skin crawl. No crying, no laughter, just silence. I moved through the hallway, each step louder than the last, until I saw him. There he was, my husband, knocked out on the couch, head tilted back, mouth open, completely dead to the world. On his ears, those damn noise-canceling headphones, the ones he insisted we couldn't afford, the ones he said he needed because life was just too loud. My daughter was in her room, eyes red, cheeks blotchy, barely whimpering. She wasn't crying anymore. She had given up. I scooped her into my arms and whispered, "I've got you now." Then I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a note. I took her to my friend's house and held her like I was trying to piece her soul back together. 2 hours passed, and then I called him. I told him I was coming home early. His voice cracked, frantic, panicked. He couldn't find her. He was about to call the police, and before he could dial, I told him. I had her. He lost it. Screamed through the phone, called me names, said I was sick, manipulative, a fucking asshole. By the time I got home, his mother was already there, rubbing his back like he was the victim. She said I traumatized him, said he had a panic attack. She didn't ask how our baby was doing. She never even looked at her. Later that night, he left to stay with her, and the calls started. Family members, friends, his cousins, his aunt, people I hadn't spoken to in years telling me I was cruel, that I had kidnapped my own child, that I should apologize, and for a moment, I wondered if they were right. But then I looked at my daughter, safe, sleeping soundly for the first time in days, and I knew the truth. I wasn't trying to teach him a lesson. I was proving what he was pretending wasn't real, because if I could walk into that house, quietly, calmly, pick up our baby, and leave, and he didn't even notice, what would have happened if someone else did? A stranger, a fire, a seizure, anything. He wouldn't have heard a thing, not over those headphones, not through that laziness, not inside the bubble of denial he's been living in for years. He wasn't a father, he was a risk. And I couldn't let that risk continue. After everything I told the truth, to my family, to to anyone who would listen. Some believed me, some didn't. But I stopped caring what people thought the moment I found out she had lost weight. I used to think it was just a growth phase, a skipped feeding here and there. No, she hadn't been eating. I took her to the hospital. The doctor examined her, gently, carefully, then looked me in the eyes and said the words that lit a fire in my chest. There are signs of neglect. They told me to press charges, and for the first time in a long time, I said yes. I've since moved in with a friend. The area's nicer. The air feels lighter. There are trees outside her window and soft blankets on her crib. We're rebuilding. He hasn't asked to see her. Not once. But online, he's posting about how I trapped him. How I ruined his youth. He paints himself as a victim in a story where the only innocent one is the child he left crying. And maybe that's the hardest part. Not the insults, not the legal process, not even the betrayal. It's realizing that the man I thought could love her doesn't even know how, and maybe never did. So, am I the asshole? Because I didn't do this out of cruelty. I did it because when no one else showed up for her, I did. Because no one should have to cry alone for hours just to be fed. Because being a mother means protecting your child, even from the person they call father. And if that makes me an asshole, then so be it. But I'd rather be the asshole than be the mother who knew and did nothing. So again I ask, am I the asshole? Sometimes the hardest stories to hear are the ones we've seen before. The cries we ignored, the instincts we silenced, the people we trusted who didn't deserve it. This wasn't just a case of a lazy partner, it was a lesson in listening, truly listening to what isn't being said. A baby can't tell you she's hungry. She cries. A mother can't always scream for help. She copes. And a man who chooses silence, who chooses headphones, who chooses comfort over care, isn't a parent. He's a danger. This story is heartbreaking, but it's also a reminder. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to protect your child, even when the world tells you to stay quiet, to keep the peace, to give them another chance. Sometimes, the moment you stop waiting for someone else to show up is the moment you finally save someone's life. What would you have done? Would you have waited for another cry, or would you have walked back through that door? Comment below. Let's talk about what it really means to show up.